BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the show. It is time for the AMA, that is the Ask Me Anything, where I respond to your questions and comments. We go through the material together and we have a discussion. Normally these things come out on Wednesdays, and last Wednesday I did a very small thing about horror movies because it is now October, and October 16th to October 31st is the absolute best time of year here in West Virginia, so I am super pumped, but I really wanted to do a larger larger AMA where I responded to your true crime questions. But I would always like to remind you guys that you can download this program for free at LaunchPad 1. That's the audio version as a pure podcast. Take it on the go anywhere and anyhow. Be one of the thousands of people who has downloaded BlackBoxOnlineRadio for free using LaunchPad 1. There's a link to that in the description box. You can go to their website and navigate by finding the name BlackBoxOnlineRadio, but the easiest way is to just go to the description box of recent episodes and find the link for LaunchPad 1. And another great way to support the show, in addition to just listening, is to go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel murder mystery inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is fictional all the same. Feel free to have a look. Killer on a White Horse, available on Amazon. And of course there is the Teespring page. There is plenty of merchandise available, t-shirts, coffee mugs, wonderful things, and remember, being weird is not a crime. Somebody asked a question recently about which Zodiac Killer book would you recommend, and this person wanted one that was going to talk about the facts of the case, like a discussion on the facts as opposed to simply someone just putting out their theory. And of course, I had to think for a second, and this person even asked me, what do you think about Michael Cole's Zodiac Revisited trilogy? And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've read Michael Cole stuff, and just look out for something with him in the future. I'll say that much for now. Yes, Michael Cole wrote the Zodiac Revisited trilogy, which talks about the facts of the case, and then the second book in that one is what I really think was what was being desired. A book on fact-based speculation. And I also recommended Ray Grant's Zodiac Killer Solved because he really differentiates between his theory and discussing the facts of the case. If you ever read that book, you'll see very clearly in these parts of the book he is talking about the facts of the case and discussing them, and in the other parts of the book he is saying, okay, this is my theory, this is what I think happened. So that one. But I have to add another book to that list, and that would be America's Jack the Ripper by Soren Korsgaard. Just recently I finished that book, and I have a book discussion on it here on this channel. Thank you to everybody who listened to that, by the way. A lot of good reception to that episode on America's Jack the Ripper, the definitive account of the Zodiac Killer by Soren Korsgaard. That book is filled with what I think was up your alley if you're looking for a book about discussing the facts of the case. Now, Soren does include his own personal commentary and theories in that, saying, I think that these unconfirmed crimes are attributed to the Zodiac Killer. I do not think the Zodiac Killer is responsible for these unconfirmed crimes. And, you can read it, take it for what you will, and you can challenge them on your own and explore the ideas on your own if you like. But if you really want to know what he has to say, America's Jack the Ripper by Soren Korsgaard, available anywhere books are sold. But we have a comment that came in about the disappearance of Donna Lass And this one is from Crazy Inside Forever. Oh, by the way, I do a regular Thursday segment on the disappearance of Donna Lass, and I'm thinking that it's going to get even a little bit more intense. I'm going to start trying to create what I would call my own personal timeline of the events. Maybe I can even alter a few things, or just try to do something a little bit bolder with that segment. But yeah, now's a great time to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Crazy Inside Forever says, if Donna Lass is actually a victim of the Zodiac killer, this would actually point toward the suspect Lawrence Kane, as strange as that might be. Oh, I don't think that's strange at all. I mean, Donna Lass disappeared in State Line, Nevada. The Zodiac killer did not operate outside of the Bay Area in California for the canonical crimes, but one Zodiac suspect that is in Nevada is Lawrence Kane, and I think it was Classic Chevy Cat who brought that up, saying Lawrence Kane has connections to two victims, Kathleen Johns and Donna Lass. I mean, Lawrence Kane can be definitively placed in State Line, Nevada. Travis Miller, who runs the Lawrence Kane WordPress and spent 10 years researching the life of Lawrence Kane, sent me that thing about how Lawrence Kane even listed the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino as his place of employment in 1976. Donna Lass worked at the State Line Casino in 1970, and that was the last top place where she was seen alive. I don't think that's strange at all. That is just, there's something about that proximity that bothers me as well. Though no one would have to wonder, though one would have to wonder, excuse me, I misread that. How would he have gotten away with it? Not to mention, how come, when he was alive, despite his suspicious evidence, he was never thoroughly investigated? About that part, Crazy Inside Forever, Robert Graysmith wrote something in Zodiac Unmasked about the investigation into Lawrence Kane, because Robert Graysmith, of course, was writing a book about his suspect, Arthur Lee Allen, and there's just a little bit talking about other investigators and other theories that people had. And the guy that was really pushing the Lawrence Kane narrative was somebody named Harvey Hines. And in the early 1970s, Hines claimed that he found that solution to the Z13 cipher that said name Kane, and there are 3 8s in the Z13, and he thought that meant 24. And it was written from right to left. And he's like, okay, we need someone who has the name Kane, who was born in 1924 and was Jewish, because the Hebrew language was written from right to left. And the thing I've always said is, there are other languages that do that. Arabic can be written from right to left, or it is written from right to left. Tamil can be written both ways, from left to right or right to left, so says the television. But about Harvey Hines and the investigation that you were asking about, Crazy Inside Forever, what Graysmith said was, Hines spent 20 years trying to find out Lawrence Kane's whereabouts on the nights of Zodiac activity. December 20th, 1968, with the Lake Herman Road murders, as well as July 4th of 69, September 27th, and October 11th of 1969. And he wasn't able to pinpoint Lawrence Kane's exact location. I think Travis did also share with me once, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but Hines actually had the opportunity to interview Lawrence Kane more than once, or he had more than one communication with him. And Crazy Inside Forever continues by saying, if it is ever discovered that Kane was the Zodiac, a lot of the SFPD is going to feel quite guilty about the fact that they had years to get this guy and didn't, though I personally believe the Zodiac is likely to be Cheney or Allen. Kane still isn't ruled out. Well, I just said Graysmith wrote his book about Arthur Lee Allen, and Tom Voigt can also correct me if I'm wrong. I think he's leaning a little bit more toward Arthur Lee Allen having some greater involvement in the Zodiac case. He's just a suspect that doesn't seem to go away. Now, last time on the Anything Goes segment, I did an episode about the Long Island serial killer, and just one quick announcement, because it is October, I'm going to be doing a future Anything Goes segment to celebrate Halloween with you guys. As I said, like, subscribe, follow along with the show, share on social media if you like, but please look out for that Halloween celebration coming soon. But I have several episodes out now about the Long Island serial killer, which is a little bit more complicated than the Zodiac killer mystery. Firstly, there are more victims. Secondly, there is a larger time frame that is going on. The authorities believe the Long Island serial killer may have been operating as early as 1996 and before, and the crimes could have gone up to 2010 and 11 and beyond, much larger than the Zodiac killer's, what is it, 10-month reign of terror from December of 68 to October of 69. I mean, that is a little bit more typical of serial killer behavior, and you'll see this when you're reading up on serial killers. They may have been operating during a period of activity of 8 years, 10 years, 12 years. Some people have a smaller reign of terror or years of activity, like Kenneth Harrison, the Giggler, because he was apprehended early on. He operated from 1967 to 69, and he was also an impulsive serial killer who would just kill almost just because a random impulse was taking over him. And he was helping a woman walk across a bridge, and then he just decided to push her off because no one was around. He also threw a little girl named Lucy Paul Marine into the water and she drowned. Then Kenneth Harrison murdered one victim by bludgeoning him with a rock over a dispute about who was going to pay for some whiskey at a bar. But I've said this in the past, and I don't mean to go off on an enormous tangent, but if there were an 8th day in the week, like how I'm doing the episode on Donna Lass that comes out every Thursday, and last winter I did this for the case of Joan Webster, which you can find all these episodes here on BlackBoxOnlineRadio. If there were an 8th day in the week, I would try to find out, did Kenneth Harrison actually murder his final victim, Kenneth Martin? Do a deep dive podcast segment on the murder of Kenneth Martin, because all of these other victims were thrown into the water. The man who was bludgeoned with a rock was named Joe Breen, and then his body is thrown into the water in Boston, and Kenneth Harrison made a phone call saying, "There's a body down in the water. I'm the giggler." And he started laughing maniacally, and I didn't want to do the maniacal laughter, so please excuse me for that. But the final victim that Kenneth Harrison has been connected to was named Kenneth Martin. Both are named Kenneth, and he was strangled with a piece of twine. He wasn't thrown into the water, but his body was found in a subway tunnel under a piece of canvas, and something about that just really, really bothered me. Deviating from the pattern, and also with Kenneth Harrison, he's going after men, women, children, all kinds of ages, boys, girls. There's absolutely no pattern at all that with his crimes, and I was like, did he actually commit all of these crimes? But I digress from that. With the Long Island serial killer, the victims are sex workers, to the best of our knowledge. The Long Island serial killer is also referred to as the Craigslist Ripper, and we have a comment from Colonel Reb who says, "They are targeting sex workers for the same reason the Green River Killer did. Easy access, and most of the time they are not missed by family if they are off the grid for a time. Being dumped in that area, it is very dark and secluded. If it weren't for searching for Shannon Gilbert, those bodies might still be there to this very day." And yes, in May of 2010, Shannon Gilbert had what I believe to be a manic episode or some type of response to things that she had ingested. She started freaking out, more or less, and the client that she was with, Joe Brewer, as well as her driver, Michael Pack, didn't really know what to do. Shannon gets on the phone, calling 911, saying they're trying to kill me. She's running up and down the houses, to the houses in the neighborhood, banging on the doors, asking for help, and then she was never seen alive again. Now, it's possible that she ran off into the marsh and succumbed to the elements, but Studio Steph actually went back and looked at the forecast for that day and was talking about how she ran away in the early AM hours, spending the day outside in May when it's 70 degrees doesn't make you freeze to death. And I really thought, wow, what a good observation. The only way I could possibly challenge that is maybe she was out there for more than one day and She eventually passed away because she was just dealing with some mental health issues, particularly having bipolar disorder, and her driver, Michael Pack, even said that she would medicate in her own way using alcohol, ecstasy, and marijuana. So if she thought that that could keep things under control, but then when I was reading Joe Brewer's deposition, the final client that Shannon Gilbert had, he was refusing to answer questions about Shannon being in his home out of fear of incriminating himself. By his own admission, he said that he was pleading the Fifth. I mean, because that's what the Fifth Amendment is for, but he says that just that that's what his lawyer had asked him to do, to plead the Fifth, because the Fifth Amendment allows you to prevent yourself from incrimination. So, about this comment, they are targeting sex workers for the same reason the Green River Killer did. Yes, that's one of the reasons why so many serial killers target sex workers. You can lure them to a particular place. You can choose the person that you want very easily. Many serial killers are male, and they want to target attractive women. Somebody wrote that into BlackBoxOnlineRadio once, saying that almost all serial killers are going after attractive women. They are lady killers. And there's a reason, because number one, they may hate their mother. Number two, they may feel some type of animosity toward women in the past for rejecting them. And then number three, it's just they are dealing with sexual frustration in some way, so they're going after women as opposed to men. But you have people like the Zodiac killer who go after both men and women. Kenneth Harrison the Giggler, Jack the Ripper went after only women. Wow, who was I just thinking of? There was that. Oh yes, the New Orleans Axeman that I was talking about earlier this month on the channel went after both men and women, targeting people in their homes. But about about this comment here, I'm having trouble finding a better theory than what people have brought to my attention, that either it's a snuff ring or a snuff film ring. And I think that it doesn't necessarily have to mean that these crimes have been recorded, like that there's a group of people luring prostitutes to Long Island and they're videotaping the killings. I have no idea if they're being videotaped or not, but someone even suggested it's almost like a snuff ring where they're doing weird sex acts to women and then they're having them murdered, because there's just not a lot of surveillance in the area. And Colonel Reb really might be onto something about how if it hadn't been for Shannon Gilbert running away and calling 911 and her family looking for her, then they may not have found the bodies of the other victims. Because he's referring to the GILGO 4. There were 4 victims that were found buried in the ground, and Colonel Reb also asked a very good question. It says in many of the news sources that some or all of the bodies were found in burlap, and what Colonel Reb asked me was, were they found in burlap sacks, or was it burlap roll, like a sheet of burlap where the body was rolled around? And most of the sources that I found said that they were stuffed into burlap sacks. But Colonel Reb pointed out that that seems kind of weird to stuff a human body into a burlap sack. I mean, as opposed to a rolled sheet of burlap. And this is important because it would mean, where is it coming from? I mean, because one of the suspects in the Long Island serial killer mystery is named James Bissett, who was the owner of a nursery, like a plant nursery, that was the leading supplier of burlap in the area. And, I mean, I've seen some sources that say in the media that 2 of the victims, at least 2 of them, were found in burlap, but many of them state that they were placed into burlap sacks. And I think the only thing that would support that is that, yes, it's going to be difficult to shove a human body into a burlap sack. However, because the women were very petite in nature, most of them were around 4'11", so that could also suggest something about a single perpetrator with a particular type of MO, that he forced their body into the sack. But that is only the GILGO 4. For example, Jessica Taylor was mutilated and her body was left above ground. Valerie Mack mutilated, as well as some of the victims were decapitated, such as the Peaches Jane Doe. And the final point on this is, if you look at the Long Island serial killer, versus somebody like the Zodiac Killer, you'll see something different. And that should tell you that something different is going on, that it's not a string of sexually motivated crimes. Well, what is the Zodiac Killer mystery then, operating from December of 68 to October of 69? 5 people were murdered, 2 survivors, writing in these letters and cryptograms. Very, very bizarre. But, I mean, what really is going on with the Zodiac Killer? Because I don't want to be one of those guys who is just saying, okay, there's an unsolved mystery, well, therefore there has to be multiple killers and everything. Oh, I've thought about it in the Zodiac Killer mystery, and I shared all my musings with you guys here on this channel. But with the Long Island serial killer, if it turns out there are multiple perpetrators, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I mean, almost certainly there are, because some crimes have been attributed to a single person, and there's a big list of unconfirmed crimes with the Lisk murders. But with Jack the Ripper, I also think that a multiple killers theory is very plausible. The New Orleans Axeman, very plausible. With the Zodiac Killer, one person could have done it. And I want to be very clear. Yeah, I talk about the hoax theory. Yeah, I've talked about the Thrill Kill Club a lot. One person could have been capable of committing all of these Zodiac crimes. Now, there's another type of question that I wanted to respond to, and on these AMAs, I often use what I call the borrowed question, and it comes to us from an individual named Rollo Tomasi, and he hosts a show called The Rational Male here on YouTube. He is also the author of a book by the same name, The Rational Male, and I believe it's actually in 4 volumes now, and each volume has its own title. The second one was called Preventive Medicine, and he just released a new one that is all about religion. And I'm not going to get into the religious stuff, but I think that this guy is way better at talking about religion than he is about anything else. I love his commentary on that, but let's just let somebody else do that on a different channel. But he asked the question, why is evil sexy? And when he expanded upon this, what he's talking about is dark triad traits. Longtime BBOR listeners will know that I've put up this graphic of the dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Why would people be attracted to these types of traits? And my simple response was, they are not. They are not attracted to that. Men, women, they're not attracted to quote-unquote evil. They aren't attracted to narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And I'm sharing a learning process with you, so I'm not gonna stand by this statement in the end. Spoiler. But I was thinking about people that I've known. I've known people who are textbook narcissists, and they aren't well liked. I've known people who are textbook Machiavellians, and they are not accepted. They are not appreciated. Yeah, people might tolerate them when they're sitting in the room, but as soon as they walk out of the room, oh my gosh, what's that guy's problem? So people are barely even attracted to them. They only put up with them because they're around. I absolutely disagreed with that statement that evil is sexy, or that people even want anything to do with these dark triad traits. And what Rollo was actually asking about is, why are women attracted to these dark triad traits in heterosexual males? And anybody can weigh in the comment section if they want. And I said that I had a reversal, and I had a learning experience. Oh my goodness, I don't know everything. Nope. Sometimes I have to learn things too. And I began to think about every person that I had just been talking about, the textbook narcissist, the textbook Machiavellian. Like Machiavellian, someone who thinks that they're so intelligent that they can kind of move around the pillars of society and just play by their own rules because they can outsmart everybody. Well, I began to think about those people, and in almost every instance, that wasn't done because of evil. Why is evil sexy? Because it's tough, it's strong, and it's courageous. Every person that I was thinking about was exhibiting the dark triad traits because they were spoiled, entitled, and they're not doing it to be directly evil. They're doing it because of fairness. They're doing it because they believe that they deserve the behaviors that they are presenting, or they think that this is a definition of fairness that I am meant to fulfill, not trying to be bad on purpose, not trying to be malicious on purpose, not trying to be evil, like, whatever, I do what I want. Alright, I can get why people are attracted to that guy, but the other guy is all just like, no, I have the right to do this because I'm important. Yeah, okay, that's definitely not the dark triad evil that Rollo Tomasi was talking about. I'm really hoping to expand some of these discussions into a future project. I might just put them out on AstroPsych 400. I'm going to get back to that podcast for sleep in the near future. But the other day, I was out at the basketball court because one of the great things about the summer ending is now you can walk outside and it's not 98 degrees. Well, that's an ugly number. It's not 97 degrees outside, so I played a game of basketball. I just shoot baskets by myself like a couple times a year whenever I have free time. And I was thinking a lot about a book discussion that I heard on the channel Oak Leaves and Onions, which was about Rollo Tomasi's The Rational Male. And the host of that program also did one on Dr. Robert Glover's No More Mr. Nice Guy. And I was like, I have things to say about that type of material, but it's just not perfect for BBOR. I mean, sure, I can throw some of it into the AMAs because dark triad traits, that's all about the true crime world as well, about why people behave in these particular ways, and it can eventually lead people to committing crimes. But I have also done a little bit about things like psychology and assertiveness in these AMAs here. And I was listening to an episode of Oak Leaves and Onions that was going on about Dr. Robert Glover, and she was saying about how his book is very to the point and it doesn't give a lot of room for criticism. And I thought that I could really respond to his material because I learned about him first because of the interviews that he had done. I heard him on John Sonmez's Bulldog Mindset, and I was absolutely hooked and pulled in. And Oak Leaves and Onions is hosted by a woman, so I thought it was very interesting to hear a woman's take on the subject because as far as nice guy behavior goes, she even said that when a guy meets a woman and she's talking to him and he's trying to get to know her and they're having conversations, they're talking about movies and music and literature and walking in the park, and then he tries to do something and she says, whoa, wait, I thought you just wanted to be friends, that the guy is exhibiting a form of toxic behavior. He's becoming a toxic personality because he is just using conversations and trying to show that he has similar interests with a woman to get sexual access to her. And I was like, toxic? Wow. I've never really thought of it like that because Dr. Robert Glover talks about this very clearly when he says that the nice guy model is what he has in his book, No More Mr. Nice Guy That You Need to Get Away From, is a guy meets a woman and he thinks that he's going to spend 3 months talking to her, and then he's going to be rewarded with a relationship. And the therapist turned YouTuber Daniel Mackler also talks a lot about this by saying that that is the unhealthy form of love. Like, the only reason he's having conversations with her is because he wants something in return. And in this case, it's the relationship status or sex. I guess we could be a little bit more direct, but also relationship status. It's not only one thing. And he wants approval, he wants empathy, but he's only behaving this way because he wants something in return. Unhealthy love, nice guy syndrome, these behaviors are bad, but I had never quite heard of it described as toxic before. But I found that Dr. Robert Glover was very helpful when he provided that suggestion about assertiveness training, and I've talked about this on some of the previous AMAs. And just to recap all of the strong points that I've learned from assertiveness training via the wonderful YouTube philosophers that we have. And I know that some of this has been mentioned in previous AMAs, but it's good to say some things more than once because they need to be reiterated. But Robert Glover said, 3 times a day, ask somebody to do something for you that you could do yourself. And I was like, 3 times a day? I can do it once a day, maybe, but 3 times a day? But it's about pushing yourself out of the comfort zone or an ineffective comfort zone. On the weekly journals here on the Instagram podcast, actually, I talk about the Harper House. I started watching that show on Paramount Plus. It's a cartoon, but it's TVMA. It's really not a very mature cartoon, but they still gave it that rating. And one of the characters said, life is telling you two things. The first is that you need to live in a world of gentle self-care, and the other is that you need to be pushed out of your comfort zone. Which one is it? And I was like, oh, wait a second. A lot of self-care is actually pushing you out of the comfort zone. And it's doing things like that 3 times a day. Ask somebody to do something for you that you could do yourself. But I think that the rule number 0 should be that assertiveness training is about recognizing that you are not going to be a peacemaker. It's not about resolving conflicts. It's about you. It's about doing things that benefit you. It's about learning to fight mentally in a world with other people who are already fighting mentally with you. So that could be one way to... Okay, let's have that as rule 0. And then number 1, 3 times a day, ask people to do something for you that you could do yourself. And then the next one would be from Scott Adams, who he discussed this in his book, Loser Think. He said, once a day, do something conventionally embarrassing. And if you do that one for a while, it's going to be quite difficult to think about something that is conventionally embarrassing every single day. It got to the point where I was like, all right, maybe today I won't wear deodorant. That's embarrassing, right? Yes. Yes, it is. But that's the whole thing. That's another example of self-help that is about pushing you outside of your comfort zone. It's training you not to feel anything when other people are going to give you funny looks or call you out on your behavior. And I've also talked about the channel Barehanded Enterprises, on which I'm proposed. Do not accept the result when you asked for the reason. When you ask somebody, why not? And they just say, because I don't want to, because I don't have to, because it's my choice, not yours. That is the result. Demand the reason and program it into your mind, because otherwise, somebody like me, who is extremely agreeable, I've been in this situation, your instinct just takes over, and you go along with what other people want to do. But there's another point to mention that I've never included before, and I heard about it on Oak Leaves and Onions, and it was about people are going to try and catch you off guard. And she said this in a very roundabout way, but when you're in a situation like a group setting, always keep your guard up, because people are going to try and wait for you to not pay attention, and then they're going to do something to embarrass you, or they're going to tell you to shut up, or they're going to tell you to stop talking if they feel like you are in a unintimidating position. They're going to do something in the name of momentary domination. No matter what, if you're with friends, family, co-workers, people that you're just talking to on the subway, always keep your guard up, and always be aware that the other person might be trying to do something to dominate the conversation. People are going to try and push you around if you aren't ready for it. So I think that that is something that needs to be incorporated into the list. But that stuff could be mentioned in a future podcast, maybe on Astro Psych 400. I've also been finding some new true crime programs, and this is going to sound a little bit more like True Crime Talk Radio, that segment, which I hope I'll keep doing as soon as I have some more time this year, on Tuesdays, Tuesday True Crime Talk Radio here on BBOR. But on Tubi, Tubi, that streaming service, they have launched an original series called Meet, Marry, Murder. It's hosted by Michelle Trachtenberg, and I was like, what was that show that she used to do? Like, of course, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and she's the actress from that Harriet the Spy movie that she did when she was a kid. I think that was her breakout role. But she did this thing, what's it called, Truth or Scare, where she would tell scary stories to children, and I saw it just like maybe 2 years too late when it was just too silly for me. She would say, "Wanna see something really scary?" But now she's doing it more or less for adults, and it's called Meet, Marry, Murder. And they have some very, very fascinating cases that they're talking about. And even in the second episode, they did a story about a man who was just completely abusive to his wife, and hence the title. He ultimately ended up murdering her. But what I thought was so what had me so curious was he was a Marine veteran, and he had come back, of course, from the war, and it really seemed like he was dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder in his own way, and he was absolutely in the wrong for what he did to his wife by murdering her. But I was like, they should have just hospitalized him. I mean, even if it means for an extended period of time, for years, and maybe if she even chose to divorce him during that period, that seemed like the more viable solution. I was wondering, why are the authorities always giving this guy a pass? Because he's clearly exhibiting dangerous behaviors, and he seemed like he needed psychiatric care more than anything else. But they're presented in an interesting way, and also you can tell the host, Michelle Trachtenberg, is trying to be entertaining, and I do not like any type of true crime program that blends in a lot of comedy. Like maybe you've heard some of those podcasts out there where the hosts start laughing. Like in 2018 and 19, it was very popular to do true crime comedy, and that's one of the reasons why I don't follow the BuzzFeed true crime channel anymore. Somebody left a comment about that, how I said that I don't follow BuzzFeed's true crime channel. Well, it's because they got caught up in that true crime comedy nonsense, and I was listening to this story about a missing persons case, and they're just making fun of the family because their son disappeared. I was like, what is wrong with you people? I don't even care if you're getting money for this or you're some type of actor who's just reading a script. Like, why on earth would you do that? And there's a little bit of that here in this Meet, Marry, and Murder, mostly just Michelle Trachtenberg's awkward facial expressions. But after watching 2 episodes of that, I decided that I wanted to find something that was more October themed, and I found the show called Bizarre Murders, and it had like a hockey mask like Jason Voorhees. I thought that it was going to be an actual horror program, but instead it was just about true crime, also available on the Tubi streaming service. Anybody can get this one for free, mind you, it's not a paid subscription. It was called Bizarre Murders, and they are also doing the true crime presentations, but they're just like bordering on acceptable when it comes to the comedic angle. There's this former FBI agent, and he's talking about the crimes in a very lighthearted way. But in the second episode of this Bizarre Murders, he said something that I thought was very, very profound, and that is that when the FBI is investigating a case, they rarely don't think, wow, what a brilliant criminal. That almost never happens. And that made me think a lot about the Zodiac killer. Unsolved for 52 years. No, it took 51.5 years to crack the Z340 cipher. What on earth is going on with the Zodiac killer case? I mean, it seems that there is some type of underlying hidden malicious reason about how the Zodiac fooled everybody for so long. And as far as the FBI not being baffled too frequently, if what Robert Graysmith wrote in his Unabomber book was true, then the Unabomber manhunt was the most expensive in FBI history, looking for Ted Kaczynski, and Kaczynski was ultimately caught, but those are two guys. Yes, I get what the point was. The overwhelming majority of criminals are not doing things in a brilliant way. Like the first episode of this Bizarre Murders show was about how a guy learned that his wife was having an affair, and he was in financial trouble. So it's the whole two birds with one stone angle, and he's going to take out a life insurance policy, and he hired a hitman to murder his wife. But the hitman murdered the wrong woman. They had the same first name and the same last name, and they also drove the same type of car. What are the chances, right? But they deal with situations like that, and they highlight the absurd nature of the crime. It's an older show. It's called BBOR Murders, available on Tubi for free. But as someone who follows a lot of true crime programs, I was even quite stunned at that. I mean, that is very bizarre odds. But then the hitman goes on to murder the guy's actual wife. Okay, I did it right this time. He's like, you idiot, what is wrong with you? And, I mean, there's also some things that they share with you about how some people think that they're going to get away with crimes because of searching on the web using incognito mode. They're like, there is no incognito mode for the FBI. There's no such thing as a private tab when it comes to the FBI looking through your computer. They can find your search history. So that was how this guy was trying to hire a hitman, taking out an ad online using incognito mode. But often on this channel, I refer to a crime like that as the Forensic Files murder, because every other episode of Forensic Files, someone is murdering somebody for a life insurance policy, someone is trying to have their business partner taken out so they can gain control of the business, a crime that is mostly done for financial gain, or either they want to get somebody out of line so they can be in place for some type of reward or benefit. And you really have to look at some of the ridiculous natures of these crimes because, in retrospect, is this person like, what was I thinking? How on earth could I ever possibly have gotten away with this? Like a guy who takes out an ad online for a hitman and then he hires a man to murder his wife, murders the wrong woman, then that guy wants to just set the record straight and get it right the second time, so he murders the guy's wife for real. And I mean, that's just asking to get caught. And what they shared on the show, BBOR Murders, was a lot of criminals are dumb, but they think that they are smart. And on a final note, I would just share with you guys, sometimes the true crime world can be funny. When it's dealing with crimes that are not intended to have a lot of consequences on human life. Like, I follow the show Crime After Crime a lot, which is hosted by John Lord and Danielle Howland. It's a monthly podcast. It is absolutely excellent, to be honest. I think it's maybe the best true crime podcast out there online, except for BlackBoxOnlineRadio. But aside from that, they did this one episode where this one guy wanted to go to a concert, but he didn't have a way of getting there, so he was trying to steal a plane, and he's going to fly himself to the concert, and then he was, of course, arrested by the police, and they were like, do you know how to fly a plane? And he's like, no. Well, how are you going to do it? Well, I know how to drive a car. It's the same thing, right? Okay, you want to laugh at that guy for trying to steal a plane? Nobody got hurt. Yeah, okay, send him to jail for a while, and then he'll go back to his life. He'll probably end up getting arrested again for something. But no matter what, watching these shows like Meet, Marry, and Murder and BBOR Murders, I think that they are helpful because they tell stories of humanity. This is how humanity is truly functioning. And a lot of people just turn a blind eye to this. And if you've listened to this far into the episode, you are awesome. I mean, really, because it shows that you are curious about different aspects of humanity, and that is the real focus of Black Box Online Radio. Yes, I talk a lot about true crime, that's the primary subject. The Zodiac Killer comes up a lot, but it's how do we have a greater understanding of humanity? And I've never really quite understood why many people in the general public want to turn a blind eye to this, because these are real stories. What about that thing in the assertiveness training segment that I was just talking about? Keeping your guard up. Being aware of what is actually happening. But on an absolute final note, this whole thing about Meet, Marry, Murder, they decided to create the show because many people are murdered by their spouses. Many people are set up and they are attacked by their spouses, and sometimes it's done because of a controlling ex-partner, like I said in that episode with the guy who was most likely dealing with some type of post-traumatic stress disorder partnered with pre-existing mental issues. And then there are other things like about someone committing a crime like that for profit. Well, this person is murdering their spouse. I mean, it's how on earth does it get to that point? Well, the honest answer is, just because you're spending a large amount of time with somebody does not mean you know them well. You can be married to somebody for 20 years and not truly know them, and that's not my own observation. First, it comes from Agatha Christie, who wrote that in her play The Mousetrap, when she said, "You never know what anyone is truly thinking or what anyone is like." So that's why all people are interesting. I mean, that's more or less a paraphrasing of that. And that was from the character Christopher Wren. I used to be in the theater. I played him once. And that was a good time, actually. A completely different lifetime, mind you. But I was having a conversation with somebody about that subject maybe 15 years ago, and they were the one who brought that up about how you don't really know anybody. You could be married to somebody for 20 years and you will not really know what's going on with them mentally. And a prime example of this is all of these serial killers that we've talked about. So many of them have wives. So many of them are married and they're living this double life as a serial killer. Just a couple weeks ago, I was talking about Roger Kibbe, the I-5 Strangler, who was not only married to a woman and still going out and murdering other women, but he was married to a woman who resembled a lot of the characteristics of his mother. His mother was verbally abusive, so he married a verbally abusive woman. His mother was controlling, so he married a controlling woman, and then he just kept up the deceptive facade. People do nasty things. People do terrible things. And I forget the exact context that was brought up here on this channel, but somebody was asking about why people commit certain crimes, and I think that so much of this is that if humanity is not examined, people are going to do terrible things if they think they can get away with it. Like if there's some secluded beach in Long Island and people think that they can murder prostitutes and discard their bodies, are they going to do that just for thrills? Absolutely. Now, is that what actually happened with the Long Island serial killer? I'm not sure, but we will just keep on reading, keep investigating, and see what happens. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. That email address is in the description box. You can also find a link to my personal Facebook there, as well as all of those other wonderful pages, Teespring, Amazon, LaunchPad 1. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Okay, well, I'll see you guys over on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And until next time.